Hey everyone, Shakarez or Kilowatt here, and welcome to Rift Overview, where I'll be taking a look at some of the patch 5.1 changes and explaining what they mean and how they affect the game. I will not be touching the Renekton overhaul slash rework because it would be a video by itself, I feel, and I'm not a Renekton expert, and probably solo Renekton only will do a video about it anyways, so I guess wait for that. Also, before we start, a small note, Riot says they have fixed the crowd control overlapping bug where you could use spells or actives even though you were perma-crowd controlled. We'll see if they can actually fix it entirely, but it's good to know they're actively working on getting it fully fixed. Let's start with the map changes. There are now 2 gates in each team's base. The gates on your own base allow you and your team to move in and out, but still count as impassable terrain for the opponent. They also allow the defending team to do some neat things, such as this. These changes can help junglers in the early game. The small shortcut can shave off some seconds off of their jungle routes, but they are going to be very helpful for defending teams that can now adopt new strategies when being sieged. All in all, it's a way for the defending team to have a small advantage when defending, because usually the defending team is the one that's behind, but it doesn't directly buff stats, so it's a very interesting way to kind of buff the defending team, and it will be interesting to see all the flanking strategies originating from these new gates. On to the jungle changes. First and foremost, the number of soft resets on a camp was nerfed. It used to be around 10 and now it was nerfed to 5. If you don't know what a soft reset is, it's basically when the jungle monster goes back into its initial positioning, but keeps going back to fight you and doesn't reset its HP while doing so. 10 soft resets allowed most of the ranged junglers like Kayle to virtually take 0 damage from camps, and being able to kite them forever. This is still somewhat possible to do, but less resets means you have to go into their melee range and take damage. Secondly, and probably more important, Smite now has a charge system, similar to the Targon's family of items in the support role. It now stores charges up to a maximum of 2. However, each charge takes 75 seconds to build up. A small note that this doesn't affect your early clears at all because Riot made it in a way where you'll have your first and second smite separated by 60 seconds. Smite charges also have an internal cooldown of 15 seconds, so you can go around and double smite people. Very interesting changes. I can definitely see why Riot decided to implement this system. For one, junglers who pick up Stalker's Blade or Skirmish's Saber and want to use it early in a gank will have a hard time clearing the jungle because they lack clearing ability, so it definitely helps them in that regard. On the other hand, and with Smite being a 60-second cooldown, you would see a lot of junglers passing up on smiting certain camps because they needed to keep their smite up for bigger objectives like Baron or Dragon, or just to have better ganks. The opposite would also happen where using Smite would mean the jungler could not contest an objective for a minute. Having 2 smite charges translates into more diversity and flexibility with your choices. You're free to use it when ganking if you have a charge or almost a charge up to clear the jungle. Another situation where I can see this being super useful is to control objectives. It will be much more common now to have a jungler smite the Razorbeaks for the vision buff, so they can then control Baron or Dragon vision. Speaking of smite charges, Poacher's Knife, aka the item that nobody really uses, now restores half a charge whenever you kill a camp in the enemy jungle, provided you used Smite. This makes the item a bit more viable, but it's probably somewhat underwhelming compared to the other option. Hunter's Machete, Tier 2 and Tier 3 jungle items now give more gold when clearing camps. This is awesome since junglers have been somewhat lacking in terms of gold. The extra bonus gold is also an incentive for junglers to farm a bit more and gank less. Stalker's Blade also got nerfed. Instead of having a 50% slow, it's now a 20% movement speed steal, like a Blade of the Ruined King active. While this is an overall toning down of the Chilling Smite, it might still be decent on a champion like Hecarim. Finally, Baron Nashor's damage was reduced for early stages. His damage was way too high early and teams would constantly get aced trying to take it early, so the default was for it not to be an objective at all in the mid game. In this patch, there are also a lot of interesting changes in the shop. You can now exchange trinkets, unenchanted jungle items, and boot enchants. While this may seem like a quality of life change, being able to exchange jungle items while they aren't enchanted is actually really big. This means that you might want Stalker's Blade, but you need the Ranger's Trailblazer for your early clears. Now you can do that, because exchanging is for free and easy to do. Just remember to change your jungle item before you enchant it. Speaking of the shop, there were a few item pricing and stat changes as well as a new item. Infinity Edge's crit was reduced from 25 to 20% and Phantom Dancer's crit increased from 30 to 35%. Overall, this is a nerf to the core of most AD carries that builds Infinity Edge into Static Shiv. The crit reduced on IE means that they don't spike so hard early, and the buff on Phantom Dancer is likely to make the item more popular. The choice between Shiv and Phantom Dancer right now is clearly between a cheaper, more wave clear oriented item and a more expensive crit oriented item. Morellonomicon was also nerfed. Overall, it's still the better mana regeneration item, even though it costs 200 more gold. The stats given are still worth 3093 gold, which is still a 134% gold efficiency. I knew I shouldn't have done that double Morellonomicon video. Zizrot Portal is the new weird item with exploding voidlings. While I still have to wait and see more about its viability, I can definitely say it's the strongest on very tanky champions or champions that prioritize resist, as the voidlings gain damage based on 50% of your armor and magic resistance. Last but not least, a little take on the champion buffs and nerfs. Some of these changes are fairly obvious, so I won't mention them all. If you want to know all about the buffs and nerfs, check the official patch notes. Starting with both Elise and Evelynn, while these buffs are nice and will help them out, I don't think they are enough to put them back in line with the top tier junglers, especially Elise. Since she doesn't have an ultimate, it means her scaling throughout the game is a bit weird. Evelynn is quite mana hungry, so the passive change will help. On-hit effects on E are a good plus, but nothing special. Hecarim had his Rampage's mana cost reduced for the first ranks, and his Spirit of Dread healing buffed by 30 at rank 1. Overall, these are really nice buffs for the Death Pony, but I fear that they might make him into a really solid laner instead of a jungler. Somewhere in California, Keen is now jumping with joy. Spirit of Dread is usually the skill Hecarim maxes last, so having a flat 30 increase on his heal at rank 1 is huge. Rampage is somewhat similar to Skarner's Crystal Slash. It has a very low cooldown and it's the main damage ability, so using it too much would make Hecarim run out of mana very easily. While reducing the mana cost by 4 at rank 1 might seem negligible, think of how much that is when you've used the skill 5 times in a short period of time. Speaking of Skarner, very similar buffs were given to him. His Crystal Slash now costs less mana in later ranks, which helps his early and mid game a lot. A reminder that this has to do with the removal of Spirit Stone that gave these junglers a lot of mana regen to help. Fracture's cooldown was also reduced, which is only really noticeable from mid to late game when he's putting more points into the skill, but overall it's a nice buff to help him stick to targets in late game teamfights. Nautilus also had some changes to his Titan Wrath that make him a stronger tank in the late game stages, however the changes don't really fix his early game problems as a tank jungler. Rek'Sai was obviously nerfed because of the amount of damage she could do with 1 or 2 damage items, which was ridiculous. While the nerf to her Q might seem underwhelming, remember that her Q are 3 attacks. So instead of 3 attacks with 0.4 AD ratio, there are 3 attacks with 0.3 AD ratio. That is going to be all. I don't want to take more of your time. Full changes are on the patch notes, and St. Vicious does a pretty good job doing a full rundown, so definitely check that out. That's all for today, and I'll see you guys in the Rift. Shakarez signing out.